In almost every corner of the pre-industrial world, isolated cultures with no contact with one another recorded sightings of the exact same creature. The accounts described a predator that hunted exclusively in the dark, a figure that descended from the sky in the form of a bat to target people as they slept in their own homes. Panicked villagers responded with desperate countermeasures, scattering garlic across thresholds and exhuming recently deceased neighbors to inspect the corpses for signs of unnatural life. The terrified people who recorded these horrific nightly visits were actually documenting the physical evidence of catastrophic, untreated biological anomalies. Treating the afflicted as demonic entities effectively masked the presence of the human patients standing right in front of them. Decoding these historical encounters requires us to look past the folklore and apply a strict clinical framework to the surviving records. Medical historians use a process called retrospective diagnosis, treating centuries-old diary entries and village superstitions as raw clinical data points. Where an ancient farmer saw witchcraft, the scientific method looks for a progression of observable physical symptoms. The surviving texts leave behind two distinct categories of medical evidence: widespread reports of extreme physical deformity and accounts of violent, erratic behavioral decay. To identify the source of the myth, the investigation must treat these disparate physical and behavioral clues as a single clinical data set. The historical records consistently describe individuals afflicted with a sudden, paralyzing lethargy and an extreme, painful sensitivity to daylight. This cellular breakdown is the hallmark of a rare genetic blood disorder called porphyria. When the red blood cells of a patient are struck by ultraviolet radiation, their structures rapidly deteriorate. Because the blood can no longer carry sufficient oxygen through the body, the patient's skin loses its color, taking on the pallor of a corpse. Continued exposure to the sun causes the skin to violently blister and burn, forcing the afflicted to venture outside only at night to avoid agonizing pain. The disease eventually alters the facial structure, as severe gum recession pulls the tissue back, making the canines appear pronounced and elongated. A pre-industrial society lacking genetic science would watch a neighbor turn pale, grow fangs, and burn in the sun, and logically conclude they were witnessing a transformation into a fanged creature of the night. While porphyria explains the physical appearance, historical texts also document extreme, highly contagious violence ripping through these remote communities. This microscopic image shows the pathogen responsible for the behavioral symptoms recorded in village folklore, the rabies virus. Rabies is transmitted through a bite, transferring the pathogen directly into the victim's nervous system, where it begins to cluster within host cells. The virus dismantles the neural pathways that regulate emotion and sleep, leading to severe delirium, profound insomnia, and uncontrollable bursts of hyperaggression. The neurological damage triggers an extreme hypersensitivity to strong odors, making the smell of something as common as garlic physically agonizing to the patient. Late-stage infection induces hydrophobia, where the sight of water causes suffocating throat spasms, effectively mirroring the vampire's mythical inability to cross running rivers. The specific behavioral anomalies that defined the vampire, the aggression, the insomnia, the terror of water, align directly with the physical damage caused by the infection. We can diagnose the physical body, but understanding the myth also requires diagnosing the psychology of the societies that witnessed these horrors. Human survival has always relied on a hardwired evolutionary mechanism called pattern recognition, the brain's desperate need to find cause and effect. When a community faces an invisible, highly lethal threat like a virus, the brain often bypasses rational analysis and assigns the threat a physical, conquerable form. Inventing a demon with specific vulnerabilities, like sunlight or garlic, provides the human mind with an essential illusion of control over random genetic or viral tragedies. Vampire lore provided a tool for localizing a threat that was otherwise invisible, giving the human mind a way to process the chaotic reality of disease. Modern medicine has mapped the genome and developed vaccines to neutralize the conditions that birthed the vampire. Yet the persistent human desire to invent supernatural explanations for things we do not yet understand remains unchanged. The eradication of a disease does not eradicate the cognitive bias that originally misdiagnosed it. We must consider which modern phenomena we are currently mythologizing because the underlying science is too complex for our society to comfortably digest. The physical monsters of our history have been buried, but the cognitive instinct to invent them remains a persistent part of our relationship with the unknown.